Good morning to everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this leadership dialogue with our esteemed guest, Hugh Clements. Hugh, thank you so much for being here today and sitting down and having a conversation about leadership and lessons learned and your perspectives on pieces and your experience throughout your career. Obviously, you have a wealth and a background of not only being a chief, being in law enforcement, both at the local and federal level. This conversation today is going to focus on leadership, not about titles or rank, but on decision making, building trust, navigating changes, and developing the next generation of public safety professionals. And our audience that's listening, both in Zoom and through other mediums, are in law enforcement, fire service, EMS, emergency management, or totally other roles not related to public safety as well. And the principles I think we'll discuss today are universal around leadership. Chief, thanks so much for being here. If you'd be so kind and just provide a little bit of your background and experience, who you are as a leader.
Thank you, Ben. Always great to see you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'll give you a snapshot of who I am and where I'm from. So, born and brought up in Providence, Rhode Island. Always wanted to be a Providence police officer. I ended up there, spent 38 years with the Providence Police Department, climbed through the ranks on both sides, on the investigative side, plainclothes, and in the patrol bureau side. And with our strong contract, you always go back to patrol when you make rank. 38 years is on the department, the last 12 as chief. Then I spent 2 years plus in the Department of Justice in the Community-Oriented Policing Services Office, the COPS office. Fabulous role. Then I went on to stint in consulting, and presently I am the Interim Vice President of Public Safety, Chief of Police at Brown University.
Outstanding. Hugh, I'm going to add one thing to your introduction. You're also on the advisory board for the Center for Public Safety and Justice, and we are so delighted to have you in that.
Proudly.
I want to take you back to early law enforcement. When you were joining, obviously you served as a chief for so many years of your career. Did you always see yourself as a leader?
No, not really. So I'll say this: when I came on the job, it was a lifelong dream, and as I enter, some things happened early, which pointed me in that direction towards leadership. And one I would say is probably with a few years on the job, many of the rank and file around me asked me to step up and be a trustee in a very strong, vocal Fraternal Order of Police union. I was a trustee. Shortly thereafter, I was asked to run for vice president. I was the vice president of the FOP for 10 years. Later went on to be the national trustee representing the state of Rhode Island. So at that point, I saw myself that those around me felt I should be their voice and a role in leadership. And I guess the first real sign was the very first time I was eligible to take a sergeant's exam. And that was my entire class and classes before me. I took the exam. I finished number one on a 10-person list. And I think that was it. Then I realized, okay, I'm a leader. And that was my favorite assignment on the job, uniform patrol sergeant.
Talk to me a little bit about that. We do a lot of work with frontline supervisors. Why does that matter?
I think it is the most important role in the agency. It is closest to the people out there that we ask to do, at times, impossible work. It's an impossible assignment at times to be a police officer. Has been for many years and probably more so now. So the sergeant leads the troops, leads the organization with policy, the messaging, the guidance from the command staff, the police chief, but as well, he's the eyes and ears of the rank and file to the command staff and the community. The sergeants have played a pivotal role in the last decade, at least, in this community-oriented policing service style that we have, attending community meetings and getting closest to the problems. I've always believed in there is power in proximity. By that, I mean it closest to the problems, both in the community and on the job, in the police department. What are the issues with the rank and file? What do they need? What resources do they need to do their job? So the sergeant, uniform sergeant, is a critical role in the organization.
So one of the things that we hear from a variety of different chiefs that we talk to is it's a challenge often for individuals to step into that sergeant role, right? And they're going from being a peer to everyone now to that first line of supervisor and responsible for people's well-being, responsible for their decision making. When you made that first step, if you can remember that experience, what stands out to you that was a challenge, and how did you overcome that about taking that first step into a formal leadership role?
It was a challenge, and I think the first eye opener was that you stood side by side with the women and men in your district one day, and the next day is in one of the books they coined it one lucky Saturday. The next day you're a sergeant. So you go to a mini supervisor school, and now you're standing at the podium, reading the roll call, making the assignments. And one thing that stood out is it's difficult because you're no longer in a role where you're looking to be everybody's best friend. You certainly want to engage and hold those close alignments because it's all about the people. Leadership is, I've always felt it's all about the people and being genuine and true to the people we ask to go out there and do their job, but as well, being a supervisor. I have found that police officers, they want leadership, especially from rank, but most certainly the sergeant. They want to be driven and directed by our sergeant. And I think you see in organizations, whether it's very large metropolitan police forces, mid-sized cities like where I came from, Providence, or even small and rural, you will see many officers gravitate towards a supervisor who they trust. They trust their leadership, they trust their character. And so a big change was no longer being everyone's best friend, but helping them, guiding them to be the best that they could be in the organization.
So I think that I'm just going to pull this thread a little bit, and then I'm going to come back to some of the early influences on you. That challenge about how to be a leader and how to be a manager, but still be collegial with the people that you're around. I've witnessed you, seen you in different organizational contexts, and I know you've maintained that balance. For folks that are listening or kind of thinking about that delineation about how do you keep collegiality, how do you keep professionalism, how do you keep that good rapport with the people within your organization, but still hold them accountable? How have you balanced that in 38 years of doing this?
I don't think I put much science behind it other than empathy. And I've been told, that, and I believe I have a high level of emotional intelligence. I try to empathize with people, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. I balance that with, listening. A big portion of communication is listening. I've always felt that in leadership. And in bringing those voices to the upper echelon of leadership and providing those officers with the resources and the skills and the training and the education that they need to go out there and do their assignment. And when you're posed with difficult decisions, listen, but make those decisions and don't move back, move forward. And I think the rank and file know is as long as you've been thoughtful in reasoning on a decision and you move forward, they respect that. As long as you're fair and balanced and consistent. Consistency is a big thing in leadership, especially on discipline.
Thank you. All right, so jumping back to some early kind of leadership foundation pieces, who were your earliest leadership influences on you? What did they model to you, and what did you learn from them?
So I came on the police department in a different era. So there were styles and leadership from A to Z. old school sergeants, old school bosses. We had one sergeant called Joe the Boss, and I learned a lot from the older generation of leaders in policing. But I came on as well during a transformational time, and I had one sergeant in particular who really molded and crafted me, I think, into the police officer that I became. And so he would give roll call. He selected me, and I think this was a turning point in my career. I was a patrol officer. He selected me to be in a uniform, plainclothes task force, which was a troubleshooting unit that would go in neighborhoods all over the city to address issues in the community. Again, a wide spectrum of issues in the community. So this sergeant at roll calls, he was unconventional at that time, and he would read educational items to officers at roll call training. I think you've seen that type of leader in organizations around the country who stepped up and seized the day, carpe diem, seized the moment. And they're in charge, they're leaders, and they wanted to push out the best police leader or police officer that they could. And they wanted to give them educational tools, whether it's on human rights, constitutional rights, policies within the organization. And in the beginning, many people would make fun of that particular sergeant. He didn't care. He was good. He was really good. He was committed and smart, dedicated, passionate. He had empathy for the men and women out there doing the job, but as well the community. And he just was dogged in his pursuit of making better police officers and really delivering the most professional, best police services in the districts where we were policing. So he was a huge influence on me, Sergeant Ben Manzalillo, and I am forever indebted to him for, I think, making the break in my early career.
So I'm sure as you think about your career, there are some people that you didn't aspire to be as well as those that you aspired to be more like. What did you learn from some of the toughest people that you worked for, where you might not have seen eye to eye?
You know, I learned, I think, from their mistakes. I mean, they were just cemented into the traditional way of policing, and at all costs, at every step, didn't want to change. Didn't want to change because this is just the way it is. And this is the way it's got to be. And, you know, I didn't agree with that early on. And I think that's why those around me asked me and chose me to be representative in the union and be their voice. You know, I've always thought that change is inevitable and growth is optional. If you want to grow individually or as an organization, you really need to, you know, have a wide lens as to where you're going, what you're doing, how to better prepare yourself, how to better yourself, how to better your unit, how to better your police department. How do we make this community that we're charged with protecting thrive and be vibrant? Because I've known it every step of the way, whether it was a sergeant, a district commander, later as chief in the cops office, in my role now, no community can be vibrant or thrive or be successful without very first being safe.
Hugh, I want to kind of dig into what you're talking about with unions. As you know, I'm a huge pro-union person as well. I've worked with police unions throughout my career and think that they can be very important organizations, both to move law enforcement agencies forward, but also ensure that members' rights are protected and defended. Talk to me a little bit about your experience in unions, working with unions, and the vantage that you have on what they bring to the profession. And if I can add a second or a third part to the question, if you could talk a little bit about some of the liabilities that exist with unions as well, and things that union leadership might need to think about to really give the members the best.
You know, I think it's the same both while I was in the union and on the other side of the table from management, and then later on the management side of the table and with the union. We're both in it for the same reasons. I truly have always felt that, and I truly have experienced that. While I was in the command staff and later as chief, I absolutely felt that the union leadership, tough union leadership, and loud voices, very vocal in the media, but I absolutely felt that their best interest was improving the conditions for police officers, their benefits, and as well making things better in the community. However, I would be frustrated at times with the lack of ability to widen the lens and look to the future as to what would be best for this organization. And in the end, we had rightfully so a strong union contract, but a lot of ability to, with management rights, to be creative. And oftentimes we wouldn't agree at first, but I think in the end, and I'll use an example, body-worn cameras. We were one of the first departments, certainly in the East, to go department-wide. Body-worn camera, it was not popular at the time. Many of the unions in the Northeast area were pushing back through the courts for their organizations. And, we move forward. And I thank the union to this day for that sunset clause, the pilot program we did for the first several months that led to the full implementation of body-worn cameras department-wide.
That's an excellent example, and I think one that resonates to many folks. I want to talk a little bit about trust, and you and I have talked about this before, but trust within the agency, trust within the community, how quickly it can be lost and how hard it is to gain. Talk to us a little bit about your time previously. I'm going to first ask at a local level, up to the role of chief and province of building trust within your community. How did you do it? What were your success points, and were there any times where that trust was threatened, and what did you do?
Yes, look, and especially as being a police chief, these days it's more about being a civic executive. So you have to form many partnerships, relationships, and I always found that gratifying. I love to do that naturally in the community. So it's about building those relationships, partnerships, coalitions, if you will, and building that capital. And it is really hard to try to solve problems in your community in the midst of chaos and maybe pushback in the community in the form of assemblages and protests. If you have not made those relationships, built those partnerships before those moments of crisis, you're probably destined to fail. So it truly is all about partnerships and true trust and predictability from those that serve for you. So the trust is internal with a rank and file. They need to be able, another coinage I use all the time is change happens at the speed of trust. You can't just flip a switch and ask your workforce to follow you down a path that may not be conventional. And same with the community. They both have to be able to trust you, trust your leadership, and know that you'll listen, know that they have a voice that's real. And oftentimes we make decisions in the roles that we're in, and we think, I said earlier that, and don't look back, but sometimes you do look back and you say, did I get that one wrong? And being honest with the rank and file and being honest with the community when you get it wrong is really important. And because at the end of the day, things change. This world is evolving every moment around us, and things change. And you want to make things the best in terms of safety for the community that you serve.
Hugh, as you think about the career you've had so far, are there any moments where you almost lost that trust, and how did you get it back?
I think yes, of course. I mean, I dealt with some pretty pivotal moments. I think the average tenure of a city police chief is probably around 3 years, give or take. I had been the chief for 12 years through several mayors. I had been in police leadership under several political administrations, union administrations. And at times you make, I would say all the time, you make some heavy decisions along the way. And the first major decision that you make, maybe 80% of the workforce agrees you made the right call, and 20% think you flat out got it wrong. And then the second big one you make, it's a different 20% that thought you got it flat out wrong. And by the fifth major decision you make, you have effectively ticked off everybody on the job at least once. So you make big decisions. And I think how you get it back is through listening and through communication and through reasoning why you did what you did. So articulating the reasons why you made the moves that you made that may not be popular with a certain segment of the workforce or a certain segment of the community. And that happens every single day. I think it's about, reaching that delicate balance of trying to improve the organization and reaching that balance of providing the best in public safety in the community. And oftentimes they won't agree. There are many different pockets within the community. As chief, you serve certainly for the mayor, maybe a commissioner, certainly 9 or 15 members of a city council, many community groups. You absolutely serve for the men and women that work for you, but most importantly, the community. And there are a lot of important influences and voices in the community, and you have to satisfy all of them, all of the time. It's a tough position, tough assignment, leadership in policing. It is far different than leadership on the private sector side. Private sector leadership compared to public sector leadership is completely different.
Well, before we go in, I'm going to ask you a couple questions on those differences. I'm going to ask you to brag on yourself for a second. So after you left Providence, the community did something in your honor. And I'd love you to share a little bit about that and what that meant. And I'll prompt you a little bit further. What's named after you in the community?
I didn't think you were going to go there, Ben, but no, thank you. Real quick, it meant a lot to me. The community, the city council, and the police department endorsed it. The rank and file, I know the union endorsed it. Named the public safety auditorium in my honor. It meant the world to me because I love that city. I care passionately about the men and women who served all of those years beside me and underneath me. And as importantly, I care about that community, all the different groups in that community. So the roll call room and the community room, the public safety auditorium. So it means a lot to me.
Hugh, thank you for letting me put you on the spot there. And it's not about, having something named after you that's the legacy, but it's the people that are impacted. And I'd encourage anyone who's listening in this and wants to hear about a legacy of leadership, go back and look at the archives of when that building was unnamed and listen to the community members that talk about the trust that was built with their police department and Hugh's leadership and what a difference that made to them. All right, so you brought up private sector being different, and I realize you had a fairly short time in the private sector. What are some of the differences that you see from the private sector to the public sector? And what advice would you have to policing professionals that might be looking to go into the private sector as they might wrap up their career or mid-career as they're making a transition?
And you and I know this, Ben, there are tremendous opportunities out there for police executives, not only police chiefs, anyone who served at the command level in police departments in the private sector. The private sector looks at police leaders as truly genuine leaders that can move their organizations forward for their leadership ability and their strategy and just their forward thinking in building a healthy culture and organization. So there are really tremendous opportunities on the private sector, but it's completely different. On the private side, generally they're looking for, profit and efficiency in building their product and their brand. On the public side, it's about trust. It's about the stewardship of trust, maintaining that high moral ground, and while making split-second decisions, oftentimes that affect constitutional rights, human rights, the liberty of individuals. You don't realize it while you're doing it, but decisions that you make, even as a patrol officer, never mind the chief of police, really transform your community. And every interaction counts, day in and day out. You can get the first 9 completely right, and the last one is the headline because you got it wrong. I tell mayors all the time, and you know, Ben, you and I have been in those circles with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and spoken to many mayors around the country about public safety in their communities. I have always said the most important decision you will make as a mayor is who you select as your chief of police. That's an important assignment. On the private side, when you fail or you lose money or you lose your business, well, you can pick it up again and move on. In the public side, when you fail, people lose confidence in their department. So you have failed their entire department. People lose their lives. People lose their liberty if you fail. It is unquestionably a higher calling to be a police officer. And, you know, there's a lot at stake, both for a patrolman on the streets and a leader in the department. I would say all the time at roll call, you do your best to strive for perfection. Every interaction counts. It truly does. And we've seen it time and time and time again, where a body-worn camera footage or a cell phone footage is played around the country for one incident. And you don't want that to be you. And it's a tough assignment. And if it is you, you're good. And your leadership absolutely should stand behind you. If you did these 2 things that I would say at roll call all the time as well, the job is essentially broken down. It's pretty easy. It really is. Be professional and be respectful. Never take someone's dignity away from them. Many people that we deal with, all they have is their dignity. And so, you know what, treat people with respect and be professional.
Solid pieces of advice. I want to go through a few other areas here. You've touched a bit upon the high stakes nature of being a police chief. At the last major city chiefs conference, it was announced that in the last 5 years, every single major city organization has a new principal executive. So 100% turnover within those agencies, which really speaks to the current state of the profession and the challenge within those environments. Talk to me a little bit about a time where you had to make a high stake decision with incomplete information. How did you maintain clarity and calm during that incident? Or did you?
Yes, that can be tough. Look, I was a chief during some tense moments in 2020. So we had COVID, we had George Floyd, we had protests swirling around the country, including in Providence. We had 70 plus protests. 60 about were completely peaceful assemblages where people were exercising their constitutional rights. And about 10 of them were flat out riotous, chaotic, unruly, and dangerous. And so certainly under those conditions, decision-making under pressure came into play. As well, I've had countless circumstances and calls that I've been on where decision-making comes into play while you're under pressure. And it's calm in the middle of chaos, and calm is contagious. So if the rank and file around you see the leader is on the radio screaming and yelling and certainly anxious, that plays into the mindset and the attitude of the officers performing the work out there. So they need someone who is a steward, someone who is in charge, someone who is calm, and they look at, and it's not easy with some of the moments that you're thrust into, but they look upon that as, okay, we've got this. And as a leader, you want to know, what do we have at the moment? What are we facing right now? What are we doing right now? And what resources do I need to bring in at this moment to provide the best possible outcome for this scenario? And that could be a number of things, depending on the size of the department and the complement of resources that you have. But I think the rank and file is absolutely always looking at, what is the leader doing? And the leader should slow things down in his mind and breathe. And I think one of the things when you have a mountain, a situation, or an assignment in front of you, don't look at it in totality. Look at it in short clips. Look at it in 5-minute clips, a half-hour clips. What do I have before me right now? Because if you look at the entire situation, it may be too much to overcome. And I say that because your mindset should be, what is my next best move? What is my next best play? And then so on and so forth. It's almost, there are so many analogies to sports, right? And, what am I doing at this moment on this play? I'm not worried about the fourth quarter late in the game with 2 minutes to go. What am I doing right now to put ourselves in the best position to succeed in this moment? My next best move.
So I'm going to kind of pick into that for a second. And I'm sure you've experienced in your career where there really isn't a next best move. There's a least worst move. How do you handle those situations where any of your options are not great, and you really don't have what you'd want to be your move on the table? What do you do?
Look, going back to scenarios I've been posed with, I would say, there are some impossible situations. I have sat before police officers who are in a really bad way, and I would be in their living rooms. They'd have a gun in their hand. I've done it more than once with a police officer who was clearly intent on taking their life. Gun in their hand, gun in their mouth. And you're having a conversation with them, and it can go bad at any single moment. There is no great move. It's just you're doing your best, and you're on the fly at the moment with decisions where every word that you utter is pivotal, because you don't know what just transpired with that individual who's reached that point in their life where they want to take their life. I've been in situations with hostage situations with gang members who've had a whole family held hostage. And every move you make, every word you utter can ruin someone's life. If you say or do the wrong things, we had a couple of those where they could take out an individual or the entire family. And so when you're posed with situations where there may not be the perfect right next best move, I think you fall back on your training, you fall back on your instincts, you fall back on your genuine ability to communicate with people, whoever that is, a suspect, a human being, a police officer who's on the brink of their life, on the top of a bridge, or intent on killing themselves. You may not have all the information you need or all the best resources you need to make that next best move, but I think your experience and your instincts kick in.
You went from being chief to sitting in a national office as the former director of the COPS office, one of the most influential organizations in policing, supporting agencies big and small. You've had a chance to see departments all across the country. You've had a chance to go from sitting in an agency to talking about policing nationally and internationally. What do healthy police departments in 2026 and beyond look like to you?
So it's all about the culture. It's about accountability. It's about building those relationships. And for the leader and for the organization, it's about transparency and humility. You need to build a culture that is respectful to your community. In the COPS office, I was in charge of an organization that was in charge of grants, training, and technical assistance to 18,000 police departments in the United States. and that was state, local departments, territorial, tribal, campus policing, small and rural departments from really small counties and communities down south to the NYPD and LAPD. So healthy organizations, what do they look like? They have great connectivity and partnerships in their community, and they have given their community a voice, and they are very connected. Public safety is a co-producing event. It's not solely conducted by the men and women sworn to keep peace and safety in their community. It is co-producing by the community. It is informed by the community. Each community is maybe slightly nuanced and different as to what they want and what they need in terms of feeling their police department is keeping peace and keeping them feeling safe, both in perception and reality. So I think the best departments are the ones who have the best communication and connectivity to their leaders in their community and the people. Give them a voice.
You mentioned just kind of that unique community expectation. Obviously, you're in a different community now than you were from many points in your career. But during any points of your career, how did you see community expectations change? 4 decades is a long time, and that's a lot of recent American history. What have you seen change in community expectations over the years, if anything?
No, I think it has changed. I think early on in my career, and I think communities years ago would look at their police department and want them to solve and prevent crime. And you were measured your level of success in how that went and what your statistics were. That has all changed. It really is about perception and do we feel safe? And sometimes certainly more police officers in uniform may make a lot of people feel safe and welcoming, but too many, it may not allow them to feel safer. So I think what has changed is instead of solving and preventing crime, I think communities now are looking to their departments to solve problems, fix their problems. And those problems, as we've seen, are issues that traditionally have not been called on by police to fix in their communities, but it's just the way it is. I think we began to see this probably a decade ago, and many departments have got this right with co-response models in helping their communities navigate through tough issues, the opioid crisis. And early on, I never thought I'd see police officers carrying medical devices like Narcan to reverse an overdose symptom. But in the beginning, that was unpopular, but it almost very quickly became the norm, and certainly in cities and then all throughout the country in trying to assist our communities through this opioid crisis. So it went from solving crimes to fixing problems, and communities call their department leaders for just about everything.
I know that resonates with everyone listening that has a policing background. Hugh, I want to, in our 5 minutes remaining, I want to hit you with 5 questions. So these are some rapid fire, short answer pieces, and I reserve the right to move on to the next one quickly here. But I'm looking for a couple words or a sentence and some leadership takeaways. So what's one leadership trait officers should develop today?
Emotional intelligence, empathy for those around them and the community.
What's one mistake young supervisors commonly make?
They forget their supervisors and they try to be everybody's friend. It's about
What's one? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's about the agency at the end.
What's one habit that's made you more effective as a leader?
I think listening, being empathetic to the problems, proximity to the problems.
What's a book that's influenced your leadership approach?
I've always loved Colin Powell, and the one book that I've read a few times. It worked for me in life and leadership.
What's one piece of advice for someone stepping into their first command role?
Many people think because they have the chevrons on their arm or the single double bar on their shoulder or the eagles, your title just gives you the rank, but your actions give you the authority. It's your character.
I lied to you. I said there were going to be 5 questions. I have a sixth. If you could leave every public safety professional listening today with one leadership principle, what would it be?
Build trust.
Chief, thank you for your candor, your service, your leadership insights. To everyone listening today, thank you for tuning in. Leadership in public safety isn't about rank, it's about responsibility, it's about influence and integrity and service.